because man's task is to make the earth after the model of heaven. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Man's project is to heavenize the earth. Man is made to transform the world from glory to glory, to take hold of it and break it down and remake it after the image of heaven.
And now, this is the Reformed Reset Part 2, and you can go check out social media and the websites and whatever got this, but this is Part 2. If you listen to Part 1...
if you haven't listened to Part 1, go back.
There you go. That's what I wanted to say, meant to say. If you haven't listened, you need to go back. But here's Part 2. We're talking about how eschatology affects the home and the family.
Right.
And so we are continuing our conversation with
we
the
wanted
lovely...
to hone in a little bit, right, on like genders. And so we have Jay and Amy, husband and wife. So we're going to talk with them a little bit more about how eschatology uniquely informs their roles in their home.
Okay, good.
Right?
Okay. Well, we got into the man a little bit, right?
we talked about the men the last episode.
Yeah. And then we talked about everything in kind of a broad sense.
Yeah. So if you have no idea, once again, what post-millennial, I can't say that word, post-millennialism.
You were doing it.
I have to say it slowly. Post-millennialism.
Yeah, nailed it.
That was good. Yeah, that was on.
Got it.
Many letters. There's so many.
It's a lot.
Too many.
If you don't know what it is, go back once again and listen to the first episode because you're going to be totally confused.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, so Amy, as a homeschooling mother, how does being post-millennial, how does that affect your like daily life?
In a great way, actually. Especially, like I said in the last episode, more recently understanding it more clearly and how I do that in my day-to-day. But it just does away with the somberness of kind of what's going on in the world. Mm-hmm. Not that everything's always ho-hum, but there is a lot of not
drudgery.
Awesome. Yeah. And even before COVID and all of the nonsense that I feel like it's all that we talk about, yeah, there is a lot of monotony in being a stay-at-home homeschooling mom. But there's so much great in it too. Like, I think that I acknowledge more all of the time just what a sincere gift it is to be in this role of just raising my children up and being here to be a support or a service to my husband or whatever. And I didn't always feel that way. That, I would say, that's new within even the last couple of years, where I feel joyful and contented in that role. But I think as I understand it more, and that opportunity I have to say to the kids, like, guys, like, we've got all this hope and all this stuff, so let's make use of the day that we have at hand, whether it's this small little thing or this big thing we're working toward. It's all for God and it's all for good. And
and you're shaping people. Like, what a unique thing as a homeschooling mother that we get to shape people, like individuals, like human beings that will exist forever are in our hands to
no pressure.
Yeah,
you get to make them and shape them.
There's a duplicitous meaning there. But it's a privilege, right? It really is. And
it is.
There's an onslaught of women who would look at our roles and be like, wow, you must have really just not aspired to much in your life.
Yeah.
And you're like, I make people. What are you talking about?
What do you do?
Well, you see that. People not embracing that role. Like,
well, we were even just talking about that today, because our family took on Sabbath after you guys left Canada. And
so awesome.
It's been awesome, and it's been just such a tremendous blessing to our whole family.
The whole family. Yeah.
But part of it has been a real joy for me to kind of like sink my teeth into that role and finding joy in what some would probably find like, why? Like, do you even like, why do you even like that? I was asked yesterday, like, do you actually like that? Like, if it was like, not icky, but like, why? Like, why would you want to do that?
Am I forcing her in the kitchen?
Yes.
What the question
and unfortunately, culturally, that is kind of the stance, right? Like, well, obviously your husband makes you.
Right.
And no, like, But yeah, I think that the more women tap into like, this is a joy, like be joyful in this. And yeah, you get to shape how your child perceives being at home and what they get to do.
That's huge.
It's not always easy. Yeah, which is why.
So one of the parables that we brought out in the last episode that resembles this post-millennial outlook is the mustard seed, right? That gets planted in the ground and then it grows up to be the largest tree of the garden, is what Jesus says.
Yep.
And when I think about living a post-millennial life, so even a post-millennial home that, we're talking about moms, and that means someone had to have taken this tiny seed. I don't know have you seen a mustard seed?
Yes, they're very
small.
Very small.
Smaller than rice.
Okay. This tiny little seed. That means someone could take that seed
just, for
and
scale.
go put it in the what? For scale? What did you say? Can I get this
I'm
out?
not a rice professional. I just want you to know. It's smaller.
That means they put it into the ground, right? You dig it down, you pack the little dirt around it, put a little water, and you go, there we go, winning the world.
Yep.
Yeah.
And people look at you and go, you're nuts, man.
Right.
Yeah.
But when you are teaching, Haley addition, subtraction, whatever.
Or how to braid challah bread.
Or how to braid. No, listen.
She is good at it.
Listen, that cannot fit my illustration because Haley is a freaking rock star.
Someone had to teach her at one point.
That's not my point. My point is when you have to do something, right? I'm just using the homeschooling as an example, over again, over and over, right? You're like, we did this last year and you're doing it again and again. You're doing that thing that you think that doesn't win anything, but that's exactly what wins it. And the same thing would happen with that farmer who puts that seed in the ground and goes, there we go, conquering the world. And you're like, what? But that's exactly how God does it. He put his son on a cross and went, there we go, winning.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and he literally went into the ground, right?
Yes.
And
then
then
he said that, yeah.
Resurrected, yeah. So
right. Unless the seed goes into the ground and dies, it doesn't
bear fruit.
Bear fruit, yeah.
Right.
But that's how moms can take a post-millennial look, right? Take that parable of the mustard seed and personally apply that.
Right.
Okay, that means the little things, like a farmer just shoving a seed in the ground, these little things where the next meal, the next diaper change, the next sink of dishes washed, the next little moment you have with each one of your kids, either correcting their theology where you're teaching them the right way to think about God, or or their sibling, right, or something.
Yep.
All of that is just another seed planted, and God's promised to produce fruit down the road.
Well, and you can look at people nowadays in the world and how they speak to each other and think their mother must have never taught them like how to speak to another
Very
human.
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like we tell our kids all the time, like you don't speak to your brother or sister that way, because I don't want them growing up to think you talk to other humans, like adults, that way, or your own children that way.
Yeah.
And like every little training moment is preparing them for the battle that God has for them in the future too.
Right.
That's really good. So one thing that I always want to talk about when it comes to women is just how, when you were talking earlier about having a cheerful and joyful attitude in your home, that's different than being in your home and being like a miserable cow.
Yeah.
You can be a miserable cow and you can make challah bread, or you can be like a life-giving being, teaching your daughter how to do stuff and being joyful in it and displaying the fruits of the Spirit. And that is attractive to your daughters. They're going to want to aspire to be that way. If you're a miserable cow, your daughters are not going to want anything to do.
No, they're going to run as far and as early as they can away from it. That's so true.
And your sons aren't going to want to marry a woman who's like a miserable cow in the kitchen. That's not going to be appealing to them either,
Well, if they do, if your daughters become miserable cows, then you're just going to be twice as miserable. And then if your husbands go off and marry women like that, you're just going to feel so bad for them. And it just
Well, and we had
spiral. It's not good.
It's no good.
We had a funny conversation with Nora the other day. I think maybe you were teaching, but Nora was talking about like who all our kids were going to get married to one day. Like, I wonder who Lila's going to marry, and I wonder who blah blah blah.
Nobody.
Anyway, she gets to Eddie, and she goes, "Whoever Eddie marries better know how to cook, because if she doesn't know how to cook, that's not gonna go well for Eddie." And Eddie's like, "Well, I have to marry someone who can cook like you, Mom, or like Mrs. B or Sandra. And if she can't, then maybe I'll send her over to you guys and you can teach her." And I was like, that's a good plan. That's a good plan.
She'll get the intensive course.
But,
just go live with Mom for a month.
Thing.
We'll have to ship her off to Canada so you can teach Eddie's future wife how to cook. But it's funny because you don't think that what you're doing is shaping your children necessarily. But here my kids are talking about who they're going to marry. And Eddie's like, listen, I know what I want in a woman, and if she's not up to snuff, we're gonna have to fix her, or I'm moving on. You know,
they know.
They do. It's true.
We talk about that all the time.
But I think that is part of it. Is the fact that we do have a regular conversation with our kids about that. Like, you will eventually get married. That's kind of the point, and we want you to start a family eventually, and we want you to be equipped for when that is. Like Jay talks to the boys. So we have 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl, and our boys every day. What do you always say to them when you leave the house?
Man up, lead well.
Man up, lead well. Every day when Jay leaves for work, that's what he tells the boys. Like, and he says that, like, one day you're going to have a house. This is what that needs to look like. And with Haley,
it's a long game,
right? And at first, I remember being like super not uncomfortable, but kind of. I was like, why are you talking to our little kids about like when they get married?
Just about the marriage thing.
The marriage thing. But he was like, because eventually they're going to get married, and like they need to be ready. And it's true, like, being married, I'm glad that you were ready for it, because there's a lot of men that suck. So
and there are a lot of ladies who do as well.
So and that's, I guess, part of this whole idea too, is we want to equip our kids to think you're going to head a house, you're going to bear children one day. We want you to be ready. Yeah.
And sadly, it's, well, in culture and on both sides, on the side of men and ladies, culture hates masculine men and they hate feminine women.
Oh, that's so true.
You know, they hate both of our roles, and they've kind of tried to like smush them together so that neither one of us really have a role anymore.
Yeah.
And it's just created a really ugly race of people.
Yeah.
Can we just say that?
Everyone's confused and fighting about where they belong. And
like, have you ever met a joyful feminist?
No, they're all nasty.
Like, they don't exist, you know? They're not.
I saw a clip of an obviously feminist woman on an Instagram feed, and they were pointing out the terribleness of this, but she literally was talking about how the left needs to stop fussing about the Trump loving anti-vax people not wanting to get vaccines, because if they're all gone, won't that just be so great?
Like, well, aren't you a gem
I was
of
just
a lady?
like, wow, what a prize you are, you know.
You sound nice.
Yeah, like, yeah, you don't have friends, do you? Do you?
Worth more than rubies, that one.
But anyway, it's just an example of the beauty there is there in feminism.
Yeah, and that is a good point though. Like, they're not generally, in my experience, joy filled.
Yeah,
because they're fighting to gain a position that God didn't want them to have.
Exactly.
And then when they get it, it doesn't. Even if they get what they think they want, when they get there, it still isn't what they want. You know.
Right.
Well, they're still working out of a broken worldview.
Right.
Right.
One of the things that shows you how confused the world is, and that God's design just cannot be thwarted, is that a man like Jordan Peterson, who's not a believer, but has sort of tapped into some of the common grace.
Who is Jordan Peterson, for those who don't know?
Jordan Peterson
Canadian.
He's a psychologist. He's an author. He's a Canadian. But he's done a lot of lectures on gender stuff. He does not buy into.
He's big on the YouTube.
Yes, so you go to YouTube,
well hated.
Jordan Peter.
Yeah, he's unafraid to share his
Right.
viewpoint.
Like he fought against something in Canada some years ago, and he got a lot of attention for it. But
yeah, I think 2 years ago, just before COVID, and it was a gender related issue.
No, it's before
Right.
that, but-
Was it?
Yeah, he just has a stance. Boys can't be girls. Girls can't be
Yeah.
boys.
right.
Mhm.
Just that simple.
And
Because he
Science.
believes in actual science.
Yeah.
Right.
and that's the thing, is he just kind of shares what studies actually find out, which is God's world. And so one of the things I heard him say recently was men like things and women like people. So you find men who are engineers because they want to tweak things, they want to build things, they want to, whatever, make them better, like stuff, which totally bodes with God's command for men, right? Tend and keep the garden. There you go.
Yeah.
You go do this. And then women are, they make people, like we've said in the last episode or two. I can't remember if it was after the cut, but anyway, they make people and shape people. So women are drawn to jobs that have to do with people. And his example for the women was nurses, right? Nurses are all about caring.
Social working is
social work.
predominantly female.
Yeah,
That's
obviously you find, the other gender and the other one, but predominantly.
Yeah, this is just a generalization, obviously.
Right. Predominantly, though, you find men in engineering.
Well, women
in
are more
nursing.
emotional than men are generally.
But what happens is that even though our culture pushes this egalitarianism so hard, which is just the flattening of everything, which is again a Marxist idea to just flatten everything out. There's no distinctions. Man, woman, whatever, job, whatever, nurse, engineer, whatever, it doesn't matter. Everyone is given everything and everyone should have the same outcome, same opportunities, same pay, same. And Jordan Peterson comes out and is like, actually, that's just not what we see. And he's not even a Christian, but he's following biblical principles.
Yeah.
And millions of people are like affected by that, and they follow it and they go, that is true. And then they want to walk in that way, and they want to walk in the manliness or the
Well, that's
femininity.
because actual
Right.
science reflects the orderly creator.
Right.
So even if he thinks like I'm not a believer, if he follows actual science, he will follow an orderly creator. You
Right.
just can't escape it.
Yeah.
So you're talking about egalitarianism and how like everything's flattened and everything needs to be equal. One thing that we have been accused of, Amy and I both, is that we think all women should be in their in their kitchens just baking sourdough.
Making sourdough.
And yeah.
Used to that.
And
You
sourdough
shouldn't?
is super fun. So I'm just saying you should try
Yeah, you
it.
should go ahead and try it.
It'll humble you. But even if that's not your bag, do something. Be domestic
Just do
in a way. And
Yeah.
because we don't believe everyone is exactly the same, Amy and I are actually very opposite in many ways. But yet both of us hold to the same theological beliefs. And so there's a lot of camaraderie between us. And we do like encourage each other. Hey, try this, listen to this, use this recipe, omit this for that. Like there's a lot of that back and forth. And how Amy's home is run and how my home is run probably is different, but both of us are pursuing the domestic arts because we believe it's something that should be pursued to the glory of God, and that is uniquely feminine.
Right.
And it matters. Like you can't just sit on your hands because you don't like sourdough. Do something, right?
Right. There's
Yeah,
so
like
many.
We're not
things.
trying to squish
like
all women into one mold. What we're saying
Right.
is there are like tons of things that are afforded to a stay-at-home mom to endeavor in. Find something you like, find something you're good at, find something that interests you that you can use to bless your home.
Right.
Well, there's a principle, and then the principle is manifested in many different ways.
Yes.
So the principle or the command in the Bible is that the woman is supposed to be homeward focused, and she is. This is literally what the Bible says. Can't argue it. I mean, don't argue
People
with me.
will, but yeah.
It's the Bible.
Yeah.
The woman is the home manager, the oikos despot. And I might be slightly butchering the Greek, but like home manager.
Yeah.
Like that is her role. So there's no, like, that's what God's made her for and wants her to do.
But the same is true for men. Like how you do family worship versus how Jay does in his home might look different. What you focus on, how your kids' ages, like it's going to vary from family to family. That's okay.
Yeah.
But just do something.
Well, that's
right?
sort of the so like
the goal is still the same.
Yes.
Yeah. And the way you oikos despot and the way Amy you do it is,
I can't even pronounce it. So
it's gonna do a little. It's gonna always like look a little different in the same way with the family worship stuff. But that's also sort of the beauty of how God does stuff.
Multifaceted.
It's multifaceted, right? We look at like Maine right now. The colors are turning, and it's so daggone beautiful. But it's many colors.
Yes.
Right. Many colors make it beautiful. The coat of many colors that Joseph had, that was a beautiful thing. The rainbow that was put in the sky as a sign of the covenant with Noah, that's a beautiful thing. Multiple colors. We see in the throne room of God a rainbow around the throne. This is how God works, where there's many different colors, but the principle is the same.
Mm-hmm.
We still glorify God as he has designed the world to function and work and go, right?
And this is true with children as well. All kids are very different. Like you
That's
have 2 boys, we have 2 girls, and I'm sure the same is true for your boys as it is for us. Like we look at our girls and we think same parents, same upbringing, like their environment is the same. We strive to be just and fair with both, but totally different.
Oh my word, so different.
Night and day.
Oh, and it becomes more obvious all the time. Like, okay, so this is happening. Yeah, it's true.
So this is the part of the podcast where you bring your kids in if you haven't quite yet, because we'll talk to the kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you say to the kids? To the kids who are listening, well, and parents obviously too.
Right.
Well, how does post-millennialism affect children?
Well, we've kind of already touched on, I think it was in part 1, about how you just teach your kids the theology. Teach them what it is that you're living off of, right? Like what was those marching orders that you got, and that's why you do what you do day to day. Teach that to your kids. And even if you're learning, and we said this in part 1, even if you're just learning post-millennialism and figuring this out, teach it to them and tell them you're just figuring this out. Like, hey, I'm kind of seeing this from the Bible, little Timmy, and and this is really cool that Jesus did this and whatever. And so you can teach as you learn, which will actually probably help you learn better too.
Yeah, for sure.
But that
kids want something to do. Like when you give a task to a kid, I don't know, our kids anyways.
Yeah, like, oh, I'll do that. Yeah, that's true.
When they have something to work towards, makes a difference.
Yeah.
And also I think, we kind of talk about the whole priest, king, prophet thing.
Oh, I love bringing in James Jordan.
Quite a bit from James Jordan. James Jordan has seen this. He sees this paradigm of priest, king, prophet throughout the Bible, but sees it in Christian maturity.
We made flashcards for our kids.
Yeah. We're teaching them, you are a priest right now. But what the priest is, though, is someone who just follows the rules exactly how they've been given him. God
said, do sacrifices like this. They say, yes, sir.
Right. Exactly. He said, cook this part. If it's this kind of offering, you cook these parts of the animal. You wash these parts before you cook it. And then afterwards you do that and you mix this. And then it goes up as a, sweet smelling aroma unto the Lord. But on this sacrifice, it's the whole thing and whatever. And on this one, you get to eat part of it.
But it's all very specific. And they may not say, but what if we just, sprinkled some of this on here? Or what if we didn't wash it this time?
What if we took the fire like this? Well, the earth might open up and swallow you. That's what might happen.
We don't.
But as far as Christian maturity goes, James Jordan teaches how there's this priesthood period where you just follow the rules. You're in the house of your parents. You follow these rules and that's it. And then you become a king. When you move out, you get married or you move out. And
you're given responsibility. You're given wisdom. And
now you take the wisdom, or you apply wisdom rather, given the laws that you've been following for all these years as a king. And then in your old age as an elder, you're now a prophet who can now speak to the priests and kings and guide and lead them through their stages as they move. You see
that when you become like a grandparent or you're given like a authority roles, like a pastor or a teacher or something.
Right. Because once you're a grandparent, now your kids are like, Mom, Dad, what did you do when I did this? You know, and
so now you're the prophet imparting.
Right, the wisdom and the word right down. Yeah. But you can talk to your kids about that and tell them, and that again is a long-term, future-focused.
You're seeing your kid as the future prophet when you're training them as a priest. Yeah. I should find the flashcards. Hold on.
Okay, she's gonna get the flashcards.
Did you make them up? Did you guys actually make them?
Yeah, Ericha did. She
that
just
sounds
did.
Perfect.
What's the priest stage? What's the king stage? What's the prophet stage?
I like that.
And there it is. That's that homeschool mom. You know what I mean?
Laminated too.
Laminated
of course they are.
Flashcards.
Are you even a homeschool mom if you didn't laminate them like that?
But this is how your home can be post-millennial. I want to make sure I keep repeating this to get back to our title. Is when you're post-millennial, you're thinking long-term, and you're thinking of little investments today that are dependent upon the promises of God.
Right.
And they're going to bring fruit 20 years from now, 100 years from now. And this is one way that you can teach your kids same paradigm, that same principle as the priest, king, prophet understanding of Christian maturity.
You're raising your sons to be grandfathers and your daughters to be grandmothers. Like that's literally what you're doing. You're not just catering to their. Did I ruin my microphone? I'm sorry.
I don't know what you did.
I'm really bad with technology. It hates me.
You sound great. So.
Okay.
Well, that's good. She always does. Okay. Are we gonna read these?
Go ahead.
All right. So I dropped one.
Oh geez.
Can you grab that?
That's why they're laminated.
So we already talked about the 3 stages: priest, king, prophet. And so this is what we're teaching our kids. Describe the priest stage. And this is what they are learning. A priest does exactly what he is told. He obeys God's instructions exactly as they are given. And that's it. All right. Describe the king stage. The king stage begins after he has first mastered the priest stage. The king has learned wisdom as a priest and now rules by it. So again, we're talking about they've now gotten married, and now this, boy, well, and even a woman to some extent is the home manager.
Yeah, she has to rule by wisdom.
That's her, area, her realm of rule.
Well, wisdom is personified in scriptures as a woman.
And wisdom's a woman.
Right. Yeah.
So, but that has to be on the basis of what they learned as a priest, right? Because you can get people out there who give their, this is the demise of social media, right? Everyone has a voice, and you're like, why are you posting what you think? Because what you think is not worth like that. But as you and Jay, I'm sure that, well, probably both of you have learned this with certain jobs or something. Like, there's a period of time that you just learn all of the basics, you learn the rules, you learn all of the specific steps. And then it's after you've mastered that you now can become you can become the trainer, but also, now how you can maybe tweak something to make it better.
Yep.
You can take the rules and go, okay, let's apply this.
You can see that with David going in with his mighty men and eating the showbread.
Right.
Like, David understood the rules, and he was going to be elevated as a king, and he knew wisdom and could actually go in and eat the showbread without dying.
Yeah. Yeah, he knew what him and his mighty men were doing would allow them to do that.
Yeah, he had wisdom.
Okay. Describe the prophet stage. A prophet has learned to obey as a priest, how to rule wisely as a king, and now informs others of how they too may mature.
So that's the fully matured. And it makes sense too of Paul when he says, like, I wish all of you would be prophets.
Boom.
And you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. He wants them all to be mature.
Right. Whereas most people read that and just will think, oh, he means like prophesying at church. But like, if you take all of the Old Testament and all of the different offices and stuff, which we are in Christ, right? Like, in Christ, we're all of them because Christ fulfilled all the offices. And so at different times in different ways, we also are priests, kings, and prophets.
We're just saying these are the stages of maturation.
Yeah, but as far as you see your life, you can see that. But you can teach this to your kids so that they know their mission. Just kind of what you said, Jay. Like they know their task at hand, the work that they're doing. Like they know why they're doing it. They know what they're building by doing that menial task of whatever.
Well, you were in the Army. Like everyone's a private before they get to be a NCO.
Sergeant. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You have to pay your dues before you get to tell other people what to do.
Right. Well, and then
make
you're
decisions.
Yeah, and then there's those ranks where you're the kingly, and then once you become a senior, NCO, now you're the prophet. Now you're telling.
Well, and this makes sense as well of the verses that say we want our sons to be as
saplings
grown up in their youth, right?
Sapling's a baby tree.
Yeah, like you want your sons to be maturing faster at a higher rate than the world's children are growing up and maturing, right?
Yeah.
That's your goal. Like you do have wisdom as a parent that you should be instilling in your child. So your child should reflect that.
Right.
If they're not, you're doing a terrible job. You should repent.
Yep.
Just saying.
All right.
Children, obey your parents.
Because there's a promise.
That's right.
The promise is attached.
The promise is, what is the promise? That it would go well with you?
Let's
and
look
that
it
your
up.
days would be many in the land. Is that how it goes?
Well, I mean, yeah, to summarize, the promise is that, yes, that they were given this gift of a land, and
God's covenant children were given promises. So baptize your kids.
That's right.
Honor. So this is Deuteronomy 5:16. Honor your father and your mother as the Lord your God commanded you, that your days may be long and that it may go well with you in the land that the Lord your God is giving you.
Good.
Amen. This is the word of the Lord.
Well, and because you do have those promises, once again, like we're all Presbyterian, so we believe that God has given our children promises. We believe the promises conferred to them, right?
The promises to you and to your children.
So if we believe that, I mean, we should train them up in that because we believe God is going to actually give them the fruition of those promises. And the land, speaking there, is like that is still a New Testament verse. Like when we think of the land, we think of like Israel in the Old Testament and them getting
that was only the foretaste.
Right, but now our children are still given those promises, right? Paul reiterates those in the New Covenant, and he's saying the land is still yours to take. Like we're Post-Mill. Go take the land. This is for your kids.
It's just bigger now. Now it's the whole world.
Now it's the whole world.
Right.
So that's all I have to say about that.
Amen. So
make flashcards. In summary, make flashcards.
Well, you know I'm going to. I even have a laminator, so obviously I'll be doing that tomorrow.
Nice.
Homeschool your kids, baptize your kids,
catechize your kids,
learn the domestic arts, all of them, then lead your family as well.
Take responsibility happily, men.
Yeah, do it joyfully.
Yeah,
and watch the world change. Like if every Christian family did this, everything would change within a generation.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So eschatology matters. Don't be scared of it. Just like Jay said, baby steps, just start somewhere.
Just get into it.
Honestly, there are so many Facebook pages, even if you're on social media, you can even go on like, was it Post-Millennialism, Eschatology of Hope? Isn't that a Facebook page?
Yeah, that's a Facebook group.
You could go on there and ask tons of questions. People do all the time.
Do a Google search, YouTube search.
So many resources
to actually understand. And actually, I think if you do, it's called A Night of Eschatology, and it's Doug Wilson, John Piper, I think it's James Hamilton, and Sam Storms, and they represent each view, premillennial,
amillennial. That was a good one?
So
okay.
and Doug Wilson's post-millennial, and John Piper moderates it, and John Piper's a premillennialist. Anyway, the reason why I think it's good to go listen to is because I think Doug Wilson gives the best presentation. I think his post-millennial presentation is
he's definitely the happiest too.
He's the happiest.
He's rather the most jovial, from what I remember.
Exactly. And I wasn't even post-millennial when I watched it, but when I watched it, I thought, I want to be what he is. Like, it makes perfect sense. And he's so happy and jovial. And
he's like Santa,
It's true. He'd be a great Santa. Anyway, but that might give you just a perfect little like dip into it. And
right.
Because he's concise, it makes sense. And you go, oh yeah, that's super easy to grasp. Whereas the other views may not be so much.
Not so much.
Yeah.
So speaking of Wilson,
yeah,
I want to say something because more than likely our listeners know who Doug Wilson is, knows the whole crowd over there.
We did the best interview with Doug Wilson
Moscow,
not too
Idaho.
long ago.
It was solid.
Yeah, you got a shout out.
But like in Moscow, Idaho, they have this awesome thing happening where they actually are taking dominion, like truthfully. And we talked about how it looks very, it can look like nothing when you're starting. It can look like you're putting something into the ground and it's just dying. But you think about what's happening over there, and that's fourth generation. Like it was Doug's father who started it, first generation, and then Doug, and then his kids, and then now his grandkids are like kind of starting to do more stuff, and they're building too. And you think it might take that many generations before you actually have something that you can see. But here, his father, Jim Wilson, I think he's in his 90s, and I can't even imagine what he must be thinking looking at what's happened, because he just decided this is feasible. I'm going to move here and I'm going to make an impact and be faithful. So
that's good. Yeah,
that's our hope.
That's so true. Yeah, for sure.
That's good. All right. Well, I hope you're encouraged. I hope you see that eschatology affects your home and how you run it, how you live in it, and how much hope should be filling your home because of it. Are we good? Are you?
Yeah, I think I've decided I shouldn't have the spinny chair because I just want to spin in it the whole time.
It's such a strong
It
temptation.
really is. Now I know how Lucas felt.
Yeah, so true. Jay and Amy, thank you so much for coming on and giving your input and your thoughts here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, this is fun.
Pray for Canada, guys.
Oh,
Yes, please.
And pray for the Bruinsmas.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
They really need your prayers.
All right, everybody, take hold and reorder creation by first reforming your home. This is the Reformed Reset.
But on the basis of grace and on the finished work of Jesus Christ, the project is back and forth, and the destiny of a new transformed world is assured.
I just put the sourdough in the oven too, so I've got like 40 minutes.